Chapter 2. The Gallows.
Hazareth was a city broken into 20 years ago, when the Imperial Armada had stormed the Ashland to quell Najira's rebellion. Nowhere had it been hit as bad as Hazareth. A harbor city, vital to trade and control of the coastline, it had endured relentless sieges, bombardments, and blockades. When the dust finally settled and the rebuilding began, it didn't take long to see where the priorities lay. All the money, labor, and care went into the Imperial quarters, those pristine mansions and Laumean churches that seemed to mock the people toiling below. To this day, most, if not all, the wealth flowing in from the nearby plantations went there. Meanwhile, the Ash Elves' slums were left to rot, the buildings still bearing the scars of cannon fire and collapsing under the weight of decades-old abandon. As I limped through them, I realized that the slums weren't just neglected. They were a graveyard. They were called the Gallows, a mocking reminder of the fate that had awaited so many Ash Elves who had dared to stand alongside Najira against the Empire all those years ago. Bruised and battered, the broken alleys twisted through sagging tenements, their walls cracked and scorched. Here and there, the crumbled remains of ancient pagodas and forgotten temples jutted like jagged teeth from the ash-laden ground, their once graceful spires reduced to skeletal outlines. Layers of grime clung to every surface, and the air was thick with the stench of sweat, rot, and despair, mingling with the faint fungal tang of the glowing mold that crept across the walls. In all fairness, the Gallows didn't look too different from myself. The slums' inhabitants were gaunt, hollow-eyed Ash Elves who shuffled through the muck. Some knelt in alleyways, hands clasped, whispering secret prayers to the Abyssal Ones, probably praying simultaneously that the Imperial Inquisition would not catch wind of it. Others bartered scraps of food or scavenged for anything worth selling. A few were already too far gone, withered husks slumped in corners, waiting for their misery to end. It was a fitting name for them, really. Husks. If I ever should retire, I'd always figured I'd be a husk myself. Not that it was likely to happen. Lady Azura would sooner have me smothered in my sleep than allow her favorite puppet any semblance of retirement. I kept to the shadows, my hat pulled low, my leg dragging behind me. Up ahead, a group of Ash Elves, both Hansira and Sayashi, stood huddled in a junkyard, their bodies thin and smeared with ash. One of them, a Hansia with ribs poking out like a ruined birdcage, held a whip made of braided reeds. He lashed it across his back again and again, each strike ripping his skin apart, spilling fresh blood down his back. His lips moved in rhythm with the blows, muttering words I knew all too well. Through suffering we overcome, through pain we walk the path of the Urden. The others stood in a loose circle around him, their voices joining in a low, murmured chant. This was the will of the Abyssal Ones, of Zal Ravendural, and all Demora. At least the way they saw it. Pain was sacred. Suffering was holy. I recognized their chants from one of Azura's sermons. I'd probably heard it 1,000 times, back at the Forbidden Temple. And here these poor sods were, on the far other end of the ash wastes, taking her sermons as gospel, bleeding themselves dry in the hope of some kind of salvation. The Hanseer with the whip wavered, his knees buckling, and collapsed into the ash. A Sayash stepped forward to help him up, her chants never faltering as she dragged him away. Blood streaked the ground where he'd knelt, a dark smear in the gray. "Poor fools," I muttered, limping past. I didn't have time for this. I had a job to do, and I knew where to start. If there was one universal truth, it was that people talk in tap houses. Besides, starting at a tap house was an excellent excuse to get a drink, or 10.